Viewers, history was scripted in Lucknow as Yogi Adityanath became the first incumbent after N.D. Tiwari in the mid-80s to be sworn in as Chief Minister for 2 consecutive terms.
मैं आदित्यनाथ योगी ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूं कि मैं विधि द्वारा स्थापित भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूंगा। मैं भारत की प्रभुता और अखंडता अक्षुण्ण रखूंगा। मैं उत्तर प्रदेश राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री के रूप में अपने कर्तव्यों का श्रद्धापूर्वक और शुद्ध अंतःकरण से निर्वहन करूंगा तथा मैं भय या पक्षपात, अनुराग या द्वेष के बिना सभी प्रकार के लोगों के प्रति संविधान और विधि के अनुसार न्याय करूंगा। मैं आदित्यनाथ योगी ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूं कि जो विषय उत्तर प्रदेश राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री के रूप में मेरे विचार के लिए लाया जाएगा अथवा मुझे ज्ञात होगा उसे किसी व्यक्ति या व्यक्तियों को तब के सिवाय जबकि ऐसे मुख्यमंत्री के रूप में अपने कर्तव्यों के सम्यक निर्वहन के लिए ऐसा करना अपेक्षित हो, मैं प्रत्यक्ष अथवा प्रत्यक्ष रूप से संसूचित या प्रकट नहीं करूंगा।
Yogi Adityanath's victory has capped an eventful 5 years in which he has never been far from controversy. His policies have inevitably aroused mixed reactions. Many have said that his policies are born out of an uncompromising and exclusivist Hindutva, while others have praised him for his no-nonsense approach to governance that shuns the politics of appeasement. Yogi himself swears by Sabka Saath. In interview after interview to Times Now, he stresses on the non-discriminatory nature of his government's work.
जो एक प्रचंड बहुमत भारतीय जनता पार्टी को देश के सबसे बड़े राज्य में प्राप्त हुआ है, एक प्रचंड बहुमत भारतीय जनता पार्टी के राष्ट्रवाद, विकास और सुशासन के मॉडल को उत्तर प्रदेश की 25 करोड़ जनता का आशीर्वाद है और इस आशीर्वाद को हम सबको स्वीकार करते हुए आम जनमानस की आकांक्षाओं के अनुरूप सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास और सबके प्रयास के इस मंत्र को अंगीकार करते हुए निरंतर आगे बढ़ाना होगा।
In fact, under Yogi's watch, both spends on welfare schemes for minorities have increased. So has the coverage. So has the coverage, viewers. The figures show that a lot of the criticism he has had to swallow, including the charge that his regime is Islamophobic, is propaganda aimed at whipping Muslims into a frenzy against the state. Yogi Adityanath may be controversial and accused of spreading divisiveness, but there is no doubt that he has united and galvanized the BJP in Uttar Pradesh like no other chief minister before him, especially no other BJP chief minister before him. Many in the party are already talking of Yogi as the next big thing in BJP's national scheme of things. Listen in.
देश के लोगों की निगाह है योगी आदित्यनाथ जी पे है कि यह व्यक्ति ऐसा व्यक्तित्व है जो एक देश, उत्तर प्रदेश प्रदेश नहीं देश है और उसका नेतृत्व कर सकता है। तो इस भारतवर्ष का नेतृत्व करेगा, विश्व के सारे लोग देखेंगे योगी जी एक न एक दिन प्रधानमंत्री की कुर्सी बैठेंगे।
जिस तरीके की उनकी साफ सुथरी छवि है और एक संत के तौर पर उन्होंने अपने जीवन में जिस प्रकार से राजनीति को सेवा का हथियार बनाया, उसके हिसाब से वो अभी बहुत आगे जाएंगे और एक वक्त ऐसा आप देखेंगे कि वो इस देश के प्रधानमंत्री भी बनेंगे।
आप यह समझते होंगे कि देश का शायद ही किसी प्रदेश का मुख्यमंत्री होगा जो भारतीय जनता पार्टी का प्रचार करने किसी दूसरे प्रदेश के चुनाव में जाता रहा और उसकी सर्वोत्कृष्ट मांग रहती है वहाँ पे, ये कहीं न कहीं भारत व्याप्त की तरफ ही इशारा करता है।
So the question is, what lies ahead for Yogi Adityanath? Will his second term decide his future? Are there any limits to his growth within the BJP? Is there any glass ceiling that he could hit unbeknownst to him? These are some fundamental questions. We're joined by Mr. Swapan Dasgupta, member of Rajya Sabha, senior member of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Mr. Dasgupta, we witnessed a bit of history today in Uttar Pradesh. Yogi Adityanath being sworn in as the chief minister. Big day for your party too. Could you put into context Mr. Yogi Adityanath's historic victory in the larger ideological rubric of Indian politics?
Well, I think, if you really look back when Yogi was appointed as the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh in 2017 for the first time, the choice may have seemed rather surprising because Yogi had an image at that time as being rather aggressive, rather belligerent, and moreover, someone whose appeal was confined to eastern Uttar Pradesh, particularly the Gorakhpur belt. And it was felt that this person whose political accomplishments were mainly agitational, how is he going to fit into the role of governance? Now, I think Yogi has surprised everyone. He surprised the party, he surprised his own followers by becoming a very, very astute administrator, a person who carried out his political functions, but on top of that, managed to turn Uttar Pradesh in a way so that in the 2022 assembly elections, good governance became a facet, one facet, I'm not saying it was the entire thing, but an important facet of the appeal which led to his re-election. And I think what is very important is to realize is that, for a person who was known for a rather religious sort of politics, for him to move into that space was an enormous accomplishment. And I credit people who actually had the foresight to be able to identify that here was a person who would combine a mass appeal with administrative acumen. And I think he's done that. Today, I think the BJP in Uttar Pradesh has the advantage of having someone who combines both. He has a mass appeal distinctive to UP as well as is regarded as a very competent administrator.
It's very interesting that you should have referred to his transformation. I want to pick on that a little bit. He was described as this lightning rod for a reactive, exclusivist Hindutva. A monk who wore his religious identity clearly on his sleeve, who didn't fit in with the secular character of the Indian Constitution. Would you still continue to describe him as an individual who is slightly outside the pale of the secular, broad secular outlook of the Constitution, or would you say that there is no way now that anyone can sort of say that he is above and beyond the constitutional sort of?
Well, I disagree with the basic assumption which you're making, that Yogi was outside the constitutional pale. The role which Yogi adopted for himself as member of parliament for many terms from Gorakhpur was fitted in very much with that of his predecessors in the Gorakhpur Peeth. Mr Adityanath, who was his immediate predecessor. Prior to that, Mahant Digvijayanath, who was also, and all of them had been active in politics. They were all MPs at some point or the other. In fact, Digvijayanath was the final in 1967. He was the last MP for the Hindu Mahasabha. So, and Mahant Adityanath was a stalwart of the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. Now, Yogi came in as taking that legacy on board. On top of that, he has added something else. And I think that's really his achievement. There is that legacy, and I think it's an important legacy. But I don't think it's outside the constitutional pale. I don't think anything Yogi has done in the past 5 years, you may disagree with it in terms of its policy content, etc. But anything can be said to be extra constitutional or disband. It is not. It doesn't adhere to the Constitution. Yes, it can be said that many secularists are naturally wary of a person who still wears a saffron robe, just as they were wary of Uma Bharti in Madhya Pradesh. And but Yogi, I think, today has managed to straddle both worlds. He straddles the world of the traditional Gorakhnath Peeth, as well as the world of constitutional, administrative, normal politics, which we know it to be. The politics of development, the politics of welfarism, all that is now incorporated within him.
Well, a certain lobby of intellectuals and the new wokery, as I like to refer to them as, continuously draw attention to Yogi Adityanath's coarse language, communal rhetoric, etc. Even when he has been chief minister, the 80-20 remark, for example, became this big talking point just before the campaign really unfolded. How do you address this sort of reservation?
You see, when you talk about coarse rhetoric, I think you've got to recognize that in the electoral arena, a lot of things which are said are somewhat abrasive. It's not something which you and I would say in the studio, but it's the method of communication, and some people can excel in it, some people are not terribly good at it. Now, Yogi was basically pointing out some other factor, and I think I can put it in different ways, that he was pointing out to a situation whereby a small minority thinks it has a complete veto on who governs the state. And he was trying to contest that idea. Now, the manner in which I've said it, you're not going to find it very objectionable. You're going to say, look, you're making a political statement. But Yogi puts it as an 80-20 issue. The implication is exactly the same, but the manner of articulation differs. And Yogi, as someone who was in the forefront of quite agitational politics in Eastern UP, is quite good at that. But I think, by and large, if you separate the rhetoric of elections from the normal process of governance, you'll find that Yogi is, you might find him coarse, but I think he's perfectly acceptable. And just look at the number of interviews which he's done in the media, on television, while serving as chief minister and during his first term. And I think most people were surprised at his command over details, his administrative, acumen in this race, so his perspectives on larger national issues. So maybe people should not judge everybody by the type of language they are familiar with. And it's very easy to often debunk people for their background and say, this man doesn't really fit the bill. I don't think. And I think electorally, Yogi has shown that he's given a boost to the BJP through his personality as well. I mean, there was Modi's personality and there was Yogi. So this Modi-Yogi combination worked rather well in UP.
Let me ask you, the BJP is a cadre-based party. A large number of its top-rung leaders emerge from the RSS framework. Now, Yogi is not typically of that. He didn't come from the RSS stable, so to speak. Does that Does that put him at odds? Where does that put him in the larger saffron parivar fold, so to speak?
Well, the BJP has been expanding exponentially for many years now, for many decades actually. So the idea that the BJP is an extension counter of the RSS is probably overstatement. I think the BJP has within its fold people who come from very different traditions as well, which may not be inimical to the RSS, but they are not they're necessarily a carbon copy of the RSS. So they have their different perspectives on issues such as Hindutva and about nationalism and about what the priorities are. And Yogi represents one particular strand. Now, today, I think it would be wrong to suggest that the entire politics of the BJP is remote controlled in some way from Nagpur. It cannot be. A mass party of this nature cannot, by definition. Certainly, I think it would be wrong for me to deny that the RSS constitutes a very important input into the decision-making of the BJP. But it is not the be-all and end-all of everything. The RSS is a very important part of it. And I think a lot of people who have RSS backgrounds are in the fulfill leadership roles. But even this is a comment which was even made of Narendra Modi, even when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, that he was a pracharak of the RSS, but yet he seemed to have ideas of his own, which they didn't always correspond with that of local units of the RSS. And I think that's the case with Yogi as well.
So you're suggesting that there is no real glass ceiling for Yogi conceivably within the BJP. He could sort of ascend to...
Of course he can. Look, take the case of Narendra Modi. In 2010-11, he was Chief Minister of Gujarat. Yes, but there was always a perception in certain people that just because he's not terribly in the good books of the RSS, I mean, this was the whisper at that time, that, they're going to stop him. They're not going to really take him seriously. They'll just make sure he's just limited to Gujarat. It's not that at all. Ultimately, a political party works as a political party. The RSS certainly has its own compulsions. And the RSS is an important input into the BJP. But a political party takes decisions on the strength of political calculations. And as I see it, the political calculations suggest that Yogi is not going to be put down simply because he didn't begin his innings as a Swayamsevak in the RSS.
My final question to you. Has Yogi developed his own doctrine? Modi has his own doctrine. Has Yogi developed one, and is it necessarily does it have a national dimension?
Well, Uttar Pradesh is a very large state, and Yogi has, he certainly appeared as a no-nonsense person, the bulldozer being the symbol of that, a very sort of unlikely symbol, but anyway, it became a symbol of that in the election, and it was well accepted. This no-nonsense attitude of doing what is necessary to be done, regardless of what the political fallout may be. Now, in some ways, that mirrors Modi in Gujarat. Now, whether Modi's pan-India approach was something which evolved in the course of 2013, 2014. Prior to that, it was basically Garvi Gujarat and things like that. Now, Yogi is so far his arena of operations, his political operations are confined to the state of Uttar Pradesh. Now, no doubt Uttar Pradesh has an enormous and disproportionate impact, influence on the politics of the country. But as of now, I'd say, let's put it this way. There is nothing in Yogi which prevents him from getting into national politics, but as yet, I think national politics in the BJP is completely dominated by Modi, and I think Modi has a few more miles to go.
Well, we leave it at that enriching discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Dasgupta. Let's throw this open, viewers, to our wider panel this evening. Joining me, Shantanu Gupta, who's authored a book on Yogi Adityanath, Mohandas spy, chairman of Aarin Capitals, and a public intellectual, Rajeev Mantri, an author of a definitive book on the new idea of India. Sandeep Balakrishna, yet another author, joins this panel, and Sanjay Jha, who represents a different stand of opinion tonight on our panel, an author in his own right, and also, of course, presently crusading against the Congress leadership in the hope of trying to push the party in a direction where it will pose a challenge in the future to the likes of Yogi Adityanath, perhaps even in his home state. Let's open this up, viewers. And I want to begin first with Mr. Rajeev Mantri. Mr. Mantri, you're the co-author of the new idea of India, individual rights in a civilizational state. Is Yogi Adityanath a symbol of the assertion of group rights, especially those of the Hindu community over individual rights? Because that's what is said about him.
No, Rahul, I don't see that way at all. So if you see what the Chief Minister has been saying and delivering on for the last 5 years, he has always spoken of the people of Uttar Pradesh, all of them, irrespective of identity, and he's always formulated programs to take along everyone, much like the Prime Minister, who has also always spoken of Indians. You know, he always says 130 crore Deshwasi or 130 crore Indians. And I don't see either of them, and I certainly don't see Yogi Adityanath as having pushed any kind of exclusivist policy or any kind of identitarian kind of welfare, unlike his predecessors who had done that. And we have documented that in our book as well.
Could you elaborate on that?
So multiple governments in India, whether it was the union government under Dr. Manmohan Singh, whether it was different state governments under mostly the Congress party and some of the other regional parties, they have actually created welfare schemes targeted to the religious identity of an individual. So absurdly enough, we call this secularism in our country. And this obviously is not secularism. Secularism actually means that the state should not consider an individual's religion when interfacing with them. All that matters is that the person is an Indian, that the person, may have certain need-based welfare targeting. There might be communities which require welfare based on their economic circumstances or other historical circumstances of backwardness and so on. But we have totally inverted that and created a regime of religion-based discrimination in welfare schemes. And that has actually been, I believe, a black mark on secularism in the country.
It's very interesting because just after Yogi Adityanath won his election and this historic second term, I was reading a few editorials that appeared in a section of the press where they seemed to suggest that his victory now leads to another kind of binary, democracy versus democracy, electoral democracy versus constitutional democracy. How do you see this? That this particular mandate is a mandate that has been driven by a group of Hindus who see themselves as the inheritors of the next 100 years of India, and that this view that he is the embodiment of this sort of exclusivist view, and that while, yes, he has won a handsome electoral democracy, the focus of the aspirations that are mixed up with his office militate against the plural structure of the Constitution. How do you view this criticism?
No, so this is just, I think, elaborate word salad, which frankly is meaningless. And I'm always amused to see mainstream newspapers publishing these kind of op-eds. For the most part, this is just, I think, almost bitterness on the part of a section of intellectuals who feel disenfranchised almost, although they are often based outside India. they feel disenfranchised by what is unfolding in India. And, they invent these kind of constructs, very postmodern kind of constructs to explain what they see. But what they are not able to admit to themselves is maybe they are wrong. And, maybe what people are accepting and what people are, showing a preference for is the right path. So they are not able to kind of resolve that cognitive dissonance.
Shantanu Gupta, let me bring you into this conversation before I open this up further. Shantanu Gupta, you've written a biography of Mr. Yogi Adityanath, which was very well received. You trace his evolution from being a monk to being the holder of a constitutional office. Has office of Chief Minister transformed Yogi Adityanath's outlook on even what constitutes, for example, inclusivity?
I think first of all, Rahul, I'm happy to be in the panel with Mohandas Paiji and Rajeev Mantri, who are part of my book writing journey. Mohandas Paiji has written the foreword for my second book on Yogi Adityanath, and Rajeev Mantri very bravely hosted me in Mamta Didi's Kolkata to launch my book. Having said that, I think Yogi Adityanath is a 5-time parliamentarian for 19 years almost, and now he has completed 5 terms. And you already told, like, it's against all odds. This has never happened in UP from last 40 years that an incumbent chief minister is coming back, and that too after completing 5 years, going to Noida multiple times, and also fighting an MLA election, which was not the norm. I think inclusivity was, in the definition, as Rajeev Mantri said, has various digressions in India. But Yogi Adityanath is an inclusive leader. Whatever policies implemented are for every caste, creed. In fact, in the CSDS survey, the Muslim vote share for BJP has increased in this term, which is a welcome sign for BJP. So I think whenever the Purvanchal Express was made, or the toilets are made, when the houses are given, when the ration was given, when the DBT was given, there was no discrimination whatsoever. So I think this narrative, which was running in pre-elections, that Yogi is this, Yogi is that, I think he's won completely in the development plan. But I also want to add, which is also one of my chapters, that Yogi is bringing the cultural renaissance, and Uttar Pradesh is no more only about Taj Mahal, and that's also very true. So, and one of the op-eds I written recently, that with iPad in one hand and Puja ki thali in another hand, Yogi has shown that economic development and cultural development coexist. I think he very, very bravely or very openly says that I'm not shying away from being a Hindu. When a Barack Obama or a Joe Biden goes to a particular church before taking an oath of office, nobody calls them a Christian president of America or Christian. When Angela Merkel, whose party's name is Christian Democratic Party, nobody calls them a Christian Chancellor of Germany. I think now this debate is outdated. That someone following his own religion and someone Mathadish is a problem for a secular fabric of Uttar Pradesh or India. I think his governance has shown that how people have resoundingly voted for him, for his policies, for Narendra Modi's policies. I think the debate is over now. I think now, when the last time I met him in January, what was his statement? Like when I asked him that what will be your focus for the next term, he said, I will do whatever it takes to make UP a 1 trillion economy. I think rest all is just a chatter, Rahul. I think UP is progressing in super speed, and we all should welcome it.
So I've heard 2 interesting words, chatter, and I think Mr. Mantri used the term that these are sour grapes, or people who actually have an axe to grind, etc., that make these kind of analogies. So Sanjay Jha, let me bring you in. The Congress party can't stomach the rise, the popularity, the winnability, the electoral winnability of Yogi Adityanath. You were looking, just as you did when Mr. Modi was making a strident push for power in 2012 and 2013 for an opportunity to try and whip up this sort of chimera of saffron, if one would want to call it that, saffron assertion.
Well, Rahul, first and foremost, There is no denying that the BJP has had an outstanding victory in the recent state elections, particularly in Uttar Pradesh. But the mistake that we can make in any democracy, in any conversation, and I'm getting some manifestations of that by the previous two speakers, is this kind of, unalloyed faith that just because a political leader has won an election, it means everything is hunky-dory, sub-changasi approach. If you heard them, and Mr. Mantri, I haven't read his book, The New Idea of India, makes a very, in my opinion, a disingenuous acquisition when he says that the previous governments were playing to the gallery of minority vote bank and welfarism. The Congress has governed this country for 54 of the 74 years. It's won 10 of the 17 general elections. He insults the intelligence of the voter who he believes voted for the Congress, although the Congress was playing vote bank with welfare subsidies. I think it's an outrageous charge, and I will put it on record. Whether it's Manrega, which now Mr. Modi tom-toms, whether it's the right to food security, the right to education, whether it was FDI in multi-brand retail, whether it was RTI itself, where is any element of preferential politics being played? I mean, these are like, wild, absolutely unfounded, preposterous statements. Now, he will pick up and tell you the Hajj pilgrimage. But that is a historical thing that was done because there was a subsidy given for those who could not afford to go for the annual pilgrimage, which, by the way, has since been stopped. So we can argue about that later when we can probably debate on your show. But the point, Rahul, that cannot be denied, that while Mr. Adityanath has won the election in Uttar Pradesh, the concerns over the sectarian politics, the concern over the aggressive communalization is a reality. And let me give you one example of that. 80-20, Uttar Pradesh will become like West Bengal, Kashmir, and Kerala. I mean, these are statements which are loaded with a clear attempt at polarization. And let me tell you the third part. I keep hearing this, that welfare distribution was the big USP of the Adityanath government or any BJP government. Every government, whether it is Samajwadi or the Congress at the state or national level, has done welfarism. And this is not coming out of the party coffers, it's taxpayers' money. And the Congress bought electricity to 97%. I mean, water, whether it's health, whether it's Manrega, the food which has been provided at subsidized rates have all been done by various political parties. The BJP, I think what they do differently, Rahul, is they go knocking at people's doors. The RSS Karyakartas go and tell people, this is coming to you because of Mr. Modi's policies. I think what Narendra Modi said during the campaign was despicable when he said, "Aap mere namak khate hain." And nobody bothered to kind of rebuke that kind of, in my opinion, a brazen statement with a monarchical flavor to it. Aap meri namak khate hain? Can a prime minister of a country really say that? I mean, when it comes to food, or tomorrow he will say, you should be thankful to me and providing you roads and an army to defend the borders. And how absurd and atrocious is that argument?
No, so very quickly, Shantanu Gupta wants to respond to you, and then Rajeev Mantri. Yes, very quickly, Shantanu Gupta, before I bring in the others. Yeah.
See, Rahul, when Prime Minister said that namak kha rahe hain statement, he was quoting a video which became very popular, where in rural Bundelkhand, one woman said to a reporter that how can I not vote for Narendra Modi? Humne to unka namak khaya hai. I think Sanjay Ji is not doing enough research these days. And about welfarism, I know it's happening from 1970. Garibi hatao bhi bahut samay se ho rahi hai. But the kind of efficiency that added in last 7 years in center and last 5 years in UP is unprecedented. You go village after village. I've been to multiple villages in last 1 year, and people are just amazed with the kind of efficiency. The ration is coming, the DBT is coming, the houses are made, the toilets are coming. That's phenomenal. And that's why now this new beneficiary voter is emerging almost like a new caste. And that's the huge difference.
So the voter, not the middleman. The voter, not the middleman, is getting the benefits.
Yeah.
That's the difference, perhaps, Sanjay Jha, that saw you fall foul of the CNAG. Forget about the perception of the country. The CNAG itself brought out these anomalies. Nonetheless, let me bring in Mr. Mantri to respond to you.
No, just on Sanjay's comment that this is not a correct statement, that different governments actually have created minority-oriented schemes. I would ask him to read chapter 3 of our book, A New Idea of India. You will see it there, chapter and verse we have cited, quoted, referenced, and you can see the history of just the last 20 years. We've not even gone beyond that. And when I say 20 years, from the Madhya Pradesh government till about 2020, when the Congress government was there, going back to the UPA term. So this is all a matter of public record. And you can't just hand wave it away by saying that, oh, he's talking about the Hajj subsidy. I'm not talking about the Hajj subsidy. There is far more than that. And this is the problem with the opposition in the country, that they have closed the eyes to this. And they simply don't want to see reality, which is why they keep getting pilloried in every election.
Okay. Let me now just broaden the canvas. I'll come back to you, Sanjay Jha. We'll pick up the thread again. No problems.
Just read the chapter 3 of the book, Sanjay. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Actually, Mr. Mantri, one second.
No, could not name a single scheme on your show.
No, sir,
I don't want to make the discussion directly. I'm more interested in talking about the economic work
Sanjay
of the
Jha, I've read the
government.
I've read the book. It is a very, very, very illuminating compendium, especially chapter 3, on exactly how the opposition played this sort of selective welfareism game. So do read it. I don't want to sidetrack this particular discussion by quoting out of it, but I just want to go back to the real subject, because we are really looking at Yogi Adityanath, his phenomenal success, the fact that he's a rising star, and what actually could augur for the future. So, Mohandas Pai, let me come to you. I want to ask you a straightforward question. Is Yogi Adityanath's second term the key to him assuming a national role? Will it unlock for him a greater role at the national level?
Rahul, I would be very happy if Yogi stays in UP for the next 10 years and transforms UP. Look at the data. Our GDP as a country is around 1,50,000 rupees per head. UP is just 79,000. UP makes up 17% of India and is a poor state, even though in the last 5 years it's done very well. If for the next 10 years, Yogi is able to take up UP's per capita GDP to the national average, he would have transformed this country. The biggest benefit of having Yogi as a CM of UP is to transform UP. Because UP is a very large state, 222 crore or 23 crore people, and is able to do the work. That's fantastic. The people of India are very wise. You know, if a small cabal of people think they have the intellectual ability to define for all of us what is good governance or whom we should vote, they are living in cuckoo land. And I'm so sad to hear Sanjay talk again and again the same bullshit. They have been rejected. Out of 400 plus seats, only one seat, especially a person who went and said she's Indira Gandhi's granddaughter and that's why she has to be elected. When you are rejected by all of the people, barring one seat, you should introspect and find out what is wrong with you, why are people rejecting you? Instead of, pointing fingers to others, making unsubstantiated comments, living in delusion, which shows that how delusional these people are. The reality of the matter is,
I asked you a very specific question. No, I asked you a very specific question.
No, I'm answering a question.
So you sort of said that, okay, and I appreciate that. Look, 10 years spent, cut your teeth, learning the ropes, and quite frankly, UP the microcosm of the country at some levels. But is there since there are so many people today within the BJP who are looking towards Yogi Adityanath, he was also the keynote speaker at a very influential forum within the Bharatiya Janata Party. He is deployed as a key campaigner across states. In fact, he's the most in-demand leader. So I'm asking you, Mr. Pai, are we going to see Yogi Adityanath transcend Uttar Pradesh and assume a larger national role? And can he emerge as a consensus candidate for that national role?
Well, my view is Yogi is certainly a national figure. He's the chief minister of the largest state of India. He's won an overwhelming majority of the seats in that state. Now, is he going to be the next prime minister of India? My opinion is that the party will be better off if he runs UP for the next 10 years and somebody else becomes prime minister. Because if a party has been in power in India, you need to have a substantial stake in UP. And UP possibly in the next election or the years after that could have many more seats if the delimitation exercise carries on. So certainly a national figure. certainly a contender for the next Prime Minister after Prime Minister Modi steps down, as he has said. But my personal view is any party will be better off if he runs UP for the next 10 years rather than takes a national seat.
It's interesting because, viewers, of course, you heard Mr. Swapan Dasgupta before I opened this up to the panel, and he was of the view that the Prime Minister himself is going nowhere. He's got a considerable amount of time still left to shape the vision for a new India, and he's committed to it. So it might be a bit premature, but it's always fun to crystal gaze, and therefore I want to open this up also to Sandeep Balakrishna. Mr. Balakrishna, thank you for being so patient. And I want to take up this conversation with you. I'd asked this question of Mr. Dasgupta. I'd said that most of the prominent leaders of the BJP came from the RSS stable. Yogi Adityanath doesn't. Does that in any way limit his growth within the BJP at the national level? Or is there really no glass ceiling, and that the BJP itself has now undergone such a transformation that you don't necessarily have to come from the RSS cradle to lead the party?
Okay. Thank you, first of all, Rahul. Happy to be on this show, and thanks to all my co-panelists. Very interesting. It's a fantastic question, actually, Rahul, that you asked. Is it mandatory for BJP leaders to necessarily come from the RSS background? If you have, all of us are aware on this panel about how the trajectory of the BJP, largely speaking, that it is a mixture of where how people get into the BJP and rise up the ranks. So whether it is whether a particular leader has an RSS background or ABVP background, I don't think it matters that much in the overall reckoning, as much as a particular leader, whoever she is or he is committed to the BJP's core ideology, shows a certain sense of gravitas, and largely abides by the core values of the BJP. So from that sense, Yogi Adityanath has been a Mahant. So if he's only a chief minister who holds a constitutional post over the last 5-6 years, but even then he's a Mahant, meaning he has ingested what the BJP frames or the RSS frames as a larger Hindu narrative, or the Sanatana or the Indian civilizational narrative. So I don't see any barrier or some kind of what you call impediment, so to say, regarding his non-RSS background, because frankly speaking, if there is one, unabashed, unapologetic leader who also got into a spiritual person who actually occupied a political office, it has to be unquestionably Yogi Adityanath himself. And but on a larger cultural and a historical sphere, if you look at it, and we have to necessarily understand the Yogi phenomenon, as some people say it, from the civilizational and the historical lens. We must remember the state he is the chief minister of, Uttar Pradesh, even undivided Uttar Pradesh, which included Uttarakhand also, until recently. That this has been the cradle of Hindu civilization, if not Indian civilization, for an unbroken, historically recorded period of 7,000 years. So that's a lot. That's a lot of time. So this among other things is the most significant part of a person like Yogi Adityanath, who actually deserves to be, leading the state. And what he's actually doing is he's infusing and fusing culture, this unbroken heritage, this cultural inheritance, into politics. I mean, other people might, declaim this as some kind of sectarianism. I said that this is a profound reclamation that he's doing. And one of the big things, one of the big achievements, if you will, is this, Vishwanath corridor. I don't think it would have been so successful as it was, even if Mr. Modi was a PM, and if Yogi ji was not the chief minister, I don't think it would have succeeded on this scale. So what both Modi and Yogi are doing are profound changes. We must remember that, both politics, culture and society, all these, they are all inextricable. So one influences the other and is in turn influenced by this one.
So if they are inextricable, many people are saying that given the ease with which Mr. Yogi marries, religion, or to use the word religious development like Mr. Shantanu Gupta did, with developmental politics, many people say that if he were to assume the highest office in the land, the highest executive office in the land, India would transform into a Hindu rashtra. How do you respond to that, Mr. Balakrishna? And I'll come right out, Mr. Pai, right after to that. Yes.
Why is Hindu rashtra something to be feared or to be demonized? I don't understand. In fact, if India is a Hindu rashtra, I think that is the safest thing, and it is something that will show a beacon of illumination to the rest of the world on how to be cultured and how to be truly spiritual in the real sense of the word. Why is it inherently bad? Why is it an evil?
So you're saying Hinduness should be seen not as a way of life, but as a view on life. And it is a philosophy that can infuse governance with a morality that is perhaps lacking at this moment. That's what you're saying. You're saying that stop looking at it from the narrow prism of the Semitic faiths, the Abrahamic faiths.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, one second. Let me bring in Mr. Pai on this. Mr. Pai.
Rahul.
Yes.
Rahul, I find this Hindu Rashtra argument very specious for a very simple reason. 80% of the people of this country profess the Hindu faith. The UK calls itself a Christian country with Christian values. David Cameron is on record. The Queen is the head of the church. You know what happens in their legislature. In Europe, Germans call themselves a Christian country. The US is a Christian country, but they're all secular democratic republics. So we must make a distinction between a nation and a country. We are a secular democratic republic under law with a constitution which clearly says everybody has a right to religion and the state will not interfere in religion. That is the construct of a state. So as a state, we are secular. But as a nation, we have 80% of people. So I don't understand what is this silly argument they make. Oh, if Yogi comes, we are a Hindu Rashtra, we'll be this. I don't understand. And then our constitutional rights and the right to freedom is a part of the basic structure of the Constitution, which cannot be amended by Parliament. That is the Supreme Court decision, the Keshavananda Bharati case. So I don't understand what is this PC argument, Hindu Rashtra. And if Hindu Rashtra comes, what is wrong with it? 80% of people are Hindus. They're proud Hindus. And we must recognize that Hindus. It does not mean that the government of India and the state becomes a nation based on any faith. Nobody is asking for that. That is not going to happen. We are not a theocratic Muslim country, are we? We are not a Christian country. Please let us not get into specious argument about a Hindu Rashtra, this and that. We are a country with 80% Hindus. We should be proud of that. All of us are proud of that. We are a secular democracy where everybody has the freedom to profess their faith, and that will remain forever in this country because that is what the people of this country have. Period. Let's be proud of what we are. Let's not go into this specious argument that some silly people in Lutyens Delhi make.
Okay, Shantanu Gupta wants to come in very quickly and then I'll wrap it up. Yes, with quick comments. Yes.
Rahul, I just wanted to add that a lot of people say that India is inclusive because of constitution, but a lot of values of constitution are derived from the Hindu base of this country. When Jews came to India, there was no Indian constitution. When Parsis came to India, there was no Indian constitution, and they all assimilated. Even all the people who came as attackers, they're part of our country and they're thriving. Tell me any person who is not of Hindu faith and of ability has not reached the highest office, be it sports, be it journalism, be it politics, be it anywhere. So I think now we should, as Mohandas ji said, we should stop this stupid debate of Hindu Rashtra and making a bogey out of it, right? Okay. I think that'll be the best thing for the humanity to happen if that happens.
Mr. Balakrishna, yes.
20 seconds. I mean, I just take a couple of points on this, all this secular and this Hindu Rashtra thing. Every year, so over the since Eisenhower became the president of the US, a huge lobby of the church they started what is called a national prayer breakfast meeting, where the heads of very extremely influential churches would sit for breakfast with the President of the United States on the very first year after the new president takes oath.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Imagine something like that happening, where the heads of various Hindu institutions or mathas and other things sit with breakfast with either the President of India or Mr. Modi or the Prime Minister. Imagine what would happen. Already here, just on this space of this debate, we have things like, Hindu Rashtra and people getting riled up for it for last 70, 75 years. Imagine if something like this happens in reality.
Well,
so,
I completely understand where you're coming from on this. Of course, the last word hasn't been said on a debate of this nature, viewers. Remember the question that we began with: will the second term decide Yogi Adityanath's future? I think on that there is agreement. And I'll leave it at this, viewers. It's been interesting and absorbing. The headlines, top stories coming up right after.